Bismillah wa salam ala Rasulillah. Welcome to Atheism Nights. I'm Ex-Atheist Nihilist SkyWolf. Thank you for joining me. Seeking the truth, the methodology of seeking the truth, the tool used to seek the truth, are essential elements that the Blessed Quran focused upon. Ex-Atheist Nihilist Professor Dr. Jeffrey Lang, San Francisco University, showed complete astonishment by how this amazing book, the Noble Quran, repeatedly kept bringing our attention to the crucial role of the importance of the intellectual faculties in realizing the truth and seeking the truth. The truth, which is the reality that this cosmos was caused to come to existence by a pre-existent external cause outside its nature. Due to the fact that this cosmos is perfectly tuned, then it must be an intellectual being that tuned it, an intelligent being or intelligent cause. This is rationality, a pre-existing living being, mindful cause with intention and incredible power to come up with such a complex, fine-tuned universe. The people of intellect and rational reasoning are highly praised in the Blessed Quran, the book that was revealed around the 7th century AD in the middle of the desert. The rational reasoning that leads you to the reality that nothing designs itself by itself. A thing doesn't pre-exist its existence to design itself by itself to start with. The rational reasoning that parts cannot design the whole. The phone, for example, is not designed by the parts. It's impossible and illogical. The lifeless, mindless material cannot make laws or give life. Chaos doesn't give order, and randomness gives disorder only. Nothing causes nothing, and nothing comes from nothing. 0 plus 0 plus 0 give you 0, simply. The fine-tuned laws governing this universe are not a product of mindless, lifeless, random processes of a material. This is against rationality. But rationally, they are designed by an intellectual being with intention and, of course, capability. You can say that the fine-tuned phone is designed by itself, or you can't say, like, even after thousands of billions of years of random processes, the material can randomly come up with a sophisticated phone. You know, this is impossible. That applies on the cosmos itself. Believing in the existence of a creator of this universe without seeing him, intellectually knowing that there is a creator behind this cosmos is a fundamental theme in the Blessed Quran. Atheism started as an ordered community a few centuries ago. Maybe some atheists would bring Epicurus, a Greek philosopher who lived around 300 BC, as an example, and his, of course, corrupt problem of evil argument to show that atheism goes back as that time. But except I'm talking about atheism as a society and a community, not as like an individual who just happened many centuries ago. I'm talking about as an ordered community, not as an isolated individual existence or as insignificantly limited number of atheists on the margin of humankind history. The belief in the existence of a creator goes back deep in history, as much as archaeology can go back. As early as 200,000 BC, we have archaeological evidences, empirical evidences, that human societies, the ancient human societies, built temples to worship, actually. And we know from archaeological discoveries that human societies believed in a creator. They might believed in many gods, but also they believed in a main deity or a creator who created the universe or nature or something like that. But that happened independently and separately, as these societies were far and isolated from each other. Prior to this modern era, no atheistic community or society ever happened in the history of mankind. Is that because atheism is against human nature and rational reasoning? Apparently, atheism is not humans' default as babies when they are born. Humans are born naturally believing in a creator, and it seems that this tendency to believe in a creator or a god was injected in our DNA as a concept from the beginning. Exactly like math, because as math is part of intuitive knowledge, it's not part of empirical science, it's part of intuitive knowledge. Also, the concept of theism is part of intuitive knowledge. When we are talking about theism and atheism, we are using the intellect tool. We are using rationality and reasoning. Of course, we also use empirical science, but also we use testimonial knowledge, because all of these are sources of knowledge, and there are many other sciences and sources of science and knowledge besides empirical science, besides rationality and intellect, besides also testimonial knowledge. The mistake that atheists actually commit when they come to this department is that they try to exclude other ways of thinking and limit the source of evidence and knowledge to empirical science, and that's, of course, is a big scientific mistake, because actually even empirical science itself is a product of intellect and philosophy. But you don't have to be a philosopher actually to figure out that this cosmos must have had a cause to bring it to existence. Atheism nihilism started with Nietzsche until we ended up with a new atheism. Of course, not forgetting the era of the French atheist nihilist delusionists, actually, who think that we don't even exist. Not only that there's no creator, but there's no existence of us. We are only in a dream. It's really critical. But now we also have spiritual atheism. They get their spirituality from appreciating nature. Of course, their deprived souls are crying for spirituality, no doubt. It's in every human. But again, appreciating material won't give you spirituality. As material won't give you life, lifeless material won't give you life, powerless material won't give you power, mindless material won't give you intellect. This is reasoning. Also, it won't give you spirituality. The purpose of atheism nights is not to give you definitions of the atheistic concepts and terms. The purpose of atheism night, as everything has a purpose except us humans in atheism ideology, we are purposeless and valueless. But the purpose of atheism nights is to dig deep into atheism ideology and have reflections on sensitive atheistic topics. The purpose of atheism nights is not to give you definitions of atheistic concepts and its necessary conceptual implications, but to analyze and reflect. As we started this introduction with words about seeking the truth, we ended with words about seeking the truth. Seeking the truth is a difficult thing actually. Atheist dudes and dudesses, you will face multiple obstacles if you decided to go in your solo journey and finding the reality about your existence. Your environment as your family, if you are born into an atheist family, and then the problem, you might be one of those who are following atheism in blind faith because they got spoon-fed atheism since they were like babies, and that became like their default. But also atheist friends, and their influence and their blind faith, their ego. And your ego will set its will against your attempt accepting the truth. You might even have truth phobia. How could I be wrong and, for example, Islam is right all of these years? obstacles like your assumptions, biases, and also mainly your obsession of satisfying your whims and desires, trying to find pleasure from materialism, as Sam Harris tried to find spirituality from materialism. Seeking the truth is a big struggle. The author of the Blessed Quran highlighted that and praised those who struggled against their desires, biases, assumptions, and ego to find the reality and to find the truth. Those who don't let their ego come in their way were like praised highly because the Quran concentrates on intellect and rationality. We will also test the claim of an illiterate orphan from the middle of the desert, if you know the desert, where there's no knowledge, from the depths of the desert, who claimed that the creator of his universe contacted him with the last universal message between the creator and humans. Very interesting. He was backed up by many miracles, but the main miracle that the creator gave him was a book. He was an illiterate man from the desert, but his miracle was a book that was revealed to him in periods, not like all of the book was revealed in one time, as we will explain down the road about the authenticity and credibility of that book. No knowledge, no schools, no teachers, with a book as a miracle, that makes you wonder, what type of messenger is that? Atheist dudes and dudesses. If you wake up not in your bed as usual, but on a ship in a nice room, won't you ask yourself, how did you end up there? Who brought you there? What's the purpose of you being on that ship? Where am I going? You are served nice food to your room, caviar and champagne and all types of satellite channels on your screen, all types of fun and distraction. Would you let that deceiving enjoyment hinder you from obtaining answers to your necessary questions? What's the purpose of me being on that ship? How did I end up there? Or you will let the distraction and the brief pleasure that this life actually distract you from the main questions that you should get answers for in your entire life. The book of guidance, the Quran, warns you from distraction of the temporary brief pleasure of this world, hindering you actually from seeking the truth and make you turn a blind eye to the main questions of your entire life and maybe sink in hedonism. So Atheist Nights actually is for those who want to put all of this aside, for those who are rootedly brave enough to challenge their beliefs and put aside their assumptions, and for those who prevent their egos actually from hindering their accepting or them accepting the truth. We will talk about many different topics from Islam and atheism, but from different angle with experiences of ex-atheist nihilists like myself and others, and also from debates. We'll talk about debates that happened between Muslims and atheists, especially, for example, the 2011 Krauss debate, which weirdly the other part of the debate was an ex-atheist who became a great master debater, Muslim master debater. So we'll have reflections on them debates also. We'll have reflections on the arguments of the Quran against atheism and how an illiterate man in the middle of the desert talked about the concepts of nihilism before Nietzsche actually discussed the concepts of nihilism. I will leave you with reflections from ex-atheist math professor Dr. Jeffrey Lang, some of his reflections on the Blessed Quran and the concentration of intellect on the Quran. But before I leave you, I'd like to thank you, brothers and sisters in Islam, and also atheist dudes and dudesses, for listening, and thank you very much for subscribing and supporting this channel. I would like to see you soon, inshallah, in a new video discussing a very nice, interesting topic in atheism. Thank you very much for following.
Assalamu alaikum. I've come from the University of Kansas. We're playing in the Final Four this very instant. So I want to let you know that you've asked a lot of me today. No, I'm just joking. All right, very briefly, I just want to talk a little bit about what the Quran has to say about the purpose of life. I think this is an extremely important subject, especially for Muslims living in America, because we're sort of a minority, a new religion here, and many people are interested in what we believe. And I think the primary question that people want answered when they first consider another religion is how that religion views the purpose of life, the purpose of of our existence here. And so I'm going to begin, though, talking about an atheist point of view, because I want to talk about what sort of answers the Quran might have for an atheist. So to begin this, I need to talk for about 5 or 10 minutes about, what I believe contributed to my becoming an atheist, because I grew up in a Christian family. And then I'll talk for about 45 minutes or so about what I experienced in the Quran and how that sort of changed my perception. So it's very simple. But my wife always says I should summarize what I'm going to do before I talk, because it's easy to get lost in my speeches. And my wife doesn't have a lot of confidence in my speaking ability. So I was impressed. I thought this author, whom I didn't know, I thought was extremely brilliant, because the story is entirely coherent, but it's bringing out entirely new meaning. And it's stressing some things in the human equation that I would never have normally thought of. Actually, I thought these sort of things argued against the existence of God. Here, the author was using them to say, look at these. These play a fundamental role in the purpose of life. What? Intellect. Human beings have intellect. Right? In response to the angel's question, they are moral creatures, and they are subjected to evil and angelic promptings, and they have to choose between them again and again and again throughout their existence, and their growth, which the Quran talks about frequently, is going to depend on that. We're here to grow, as we will see, but it emphasizes choice. Human beings are creatures of choice. It also emphasizes suffering. Suffering. Hey, that's pretty nice writing. It also emphasizes suffering. Human beings are going to suffer here on earth. That's the first thing that the story mentions. Spread corruption and shed blood? Havoc, suffering, pain? Yes, these three things play essential roles somehow, the story is saying, in our development on earth, in our very purpose of our development. These are the three things we've always had the most trouble grappling with, all theologies have. Why give us intellect if it leads us often to challenge in our minds the existence of God? If we can't reconcile the existence of God with our minds, with our reason, why give us choice if we can choose to do wrong? Just make us angels. Why let us suffer so on earth? Just pop us into heaven. And here the Quran is telling that these play essential roles in our attaining of faith. Not only these, of course, it also mentions guidance, God's forgiveness, revelation, etc., angelic forces, satanic temptation. It mentions all these other things as well. But these three essentially really caught my attention. I never expected that these three things would be emphasized. And so as I read through the Quran, I looked, anytime I saw anything that seemed to relate to this, I would write down notes and underline it. And I would walk up and down in San Francisco with my pen as I'm walking, because I like to walk about 7 miles every day, and I'd be underlining. My friends would always say, Jeff, what book are you reading? And I would lie to them. I'd tell them, oh, it's a great novel or something. I didn't want them to know that I was reading the Quran. I think they thought I was going nuts. But in any case, so very quickly, I was wondering, does the Quran really emphasize reason? Does it really emphasize choice? Does it really emphasize suffering? Let's see, does the Quran really emphasize reason as essential to human growth, to this experience we're having on earth, to our very purpose? And the answer is definitely yes. So much so that even Western Orientalists, people who wrote against the Quran, said that this is a major feature of the Quran, a feature that you cannot miss. Henri Lamens, writing in the early part of this century, one of the famous Orientalists, who wrote very much against Muslims, hoping to unseat them from their religious belief. He wrote, "The Quran," and this is his quote, "is not far from considering unbelief as an infirmity of the human mind." Unbelief is, he thought, and he was saying it mockingly, is like, you can't think straight. You're not using your mind right, as my father used to say. Maxime Rodinson wrote at length about the rationalistic approach of the Quran to faith. And this rational tone of the Quran is one of its most salient features, beyond doubt. I'll just give you a few quotations. One of its fundamental themes is that people ignore or reject God's signs and corrupt religion precisely because they do not use their reason. And the Quran will say that again and again and again. The Quran says about the disbelievers, they refuse to reason and are a people who do not reason. I have 7 such quotes in the Quran. The Quran will say, will you not reason? It mentions that 14 times to the reader. God reveals signs and lessons and admonitions so that, and this is a quote from the Quran, perhaps you will finally use your reason. There are 8 such statements in the Quran. From the Quran's viewpoint, reason and faith are allies, just as illogic and false belief are allies. And it clearly sets the conflict along these lines. It says the right way has henceforth become clear from error. Those who benefit most from the Quran are persons of insight. 16 such statements in the Quran. Firmly rooted in knowledge, 8 such statements. Use their reason, 10 such statements. Stand on clear evidence and proof, 7 such statements. Those who oppose this revelation are deluded, 9 such statements. In manifest error, 28 such statements. Ignorant, 15. Foolish, 3. Have no understanding, 9. Only follow surmise and conjecture, 9. And blindly adhere to tradition, multiple times. It states that. In an almost Socratic style, the Quran repeatedly quizzes the reader and calls into question his or her assumptions. Again and again, it asks us, what do you think? 18 such statements. Have you considered this or that? 13. Did you suppose? 7. Sounds like a math teacher. Do they not ponder? 2 such statements. Do you think? Do you even think? 18 such statements. The message is clear. To gain truer faith, we need to free ourselves from inherited notions and examine our beliefs rationally. Learning plays a key role in human development. Read the Quran, exhorts the reader. For God taught us the use of the pen and taught humankind what it otherwise could not know. In life, nature, and history, in the Quran, there are signs and lessons for those who are wise. There are 21 such statements. The Quran states over 100 times that it has been revealed to make things clear. I thought the author of this Quran must have had a strong mathematical insight, a natural mathematician. All throughout, when I was reading, I was trying to imagine what he must have been like.